People said if you walked past Okoro's house at night, you could hear fear itself breathing. His home was not the biggest in Egoma village, but it was the loudest, full of shouting, broken plates, and a woman sobbing that made even the wind pause. And on the night everything changed, the village would never forget the silence that followed. Okoro's wife, Nkem, had lived with him for 7 painful years. She had entered the marriage with hope, but Okoro crushed hope the way his fists crushed anything that displeased him. He shouted often, he beat often, he controlled everything, her food, her friends, her movements, her breath. People whispered, one day he will go too far. But nobody stepped forward. Fear sat on every tongue. Then it happened. One evening, the shouting was louder than usual. The crash was heavier. And when the door finally opened again, Okoro walked out alone. His face was hard, cold, emotionless. Nkem never walked out again. The village mourned. Women cried bitterly. Men shook their heads. And elders called it a tragedy that must not repeat. But though everyone knew the truth, no one dared speak it out loud. Okoro moved freely among them, head high, chest out, like a man who had done nothing wrong. Still, something changed in the village. People watched him with hidden anger. Mothers held their daughters tighter when he passed. Men refused to greet him first. Okoro noticed. Their eyes accused him. Their silence judged him. And for the first time, he felt uncomfortable in his own land. So he made a decision. If the women of Egoma refused to smile at him, if the men refused to sit and drink with him, if the elders avoided his doorway, then he would get himself another wife. But not from this village. He would go far away, to a place where no one knew his story, his hands, or his darkness. A place where he could start again and find a woman who would fear him properly. And somewhere in the distance, a woman he had not yet met was already waiting with her own secrets.
Okoro woke before sunrise, tied his wrapper tightly, and marched toward Umuaku village. He walked like a man whose shadow feared him. Birds flew away when he passed. He didn't greet anyone. Greetings were for equals, and Okoro believed he had none. Umuaku village welcomed strangers easily. Its people were friendly, open, and quick to laugh. Everything Okoro was not. And that was exactly why he went there. No one knew his past. No one whispered behind his back. He could pretend to be a good man for a short time, at least long enough to find a new wife. When he arrived, he met the elders and told them he was looking for a calm, obedient woman, one who would respect him well. The elders exchanged quick glances. His tone carried a strange edge, but they said nothing. They led him to a compound where a young woman was pounding yam with smooth, steady strength. Her name was Amara. She was beautiful, but not in the loud way that demanded attention. Her beauty was quiet, soft and steady, like a hidden river. She lifted her head when Okoro entered, and her eyes met his with a calmness that surprised him. Most women looked away quickly when Amara approached, but Amara didn't. She didn't fear him. She didn't shrink. She simply watched. Okoro cleared his throat, suddenly feeling something he had not felt in years: confusion. I seek a wife, he said. Amara nodded slowly, her face unreadable. And what kind of husband are you? She asked. The question hit him like a slap, but he hid his irritation beneath a fake smile. A strong one, a man who knows how to keep his home in order, he said. She murmured, studying him. After a long pause, she surprised everyone. I will marry him. Too quickly, too calmly. The elders blinked. Okoro raised an eyebrow. Why was she so sure? Why did she look at him like she already knew something? But Amara only smiled, a soft, deep smile that hid 1,000 secrets. And Okoro did not know he had just stepped into the hands of a woman who was not what she seemed.
Amara agreed to marry Okoro so quickly that even her own mother pulled her aside. My daughter, she whispered, you don't know this man. Why are you rushing? But Amara only smiled. Mama, some roads must be walked with courage. What no one knew, not Okoro, not her mother, not the elders, was that Amara had already heard whispers about him long before he stepped into Umwaku village. Rumors traveled like smoke, and she caught the scent early. On the night after she accepted his proposal, she slipped out quietly and visited an old friend who had once lived in Egoma. The woman's face tightened when Amara mentioned Okoro's name. "You will marry that man?" she asked, voice shaking. "Tell me everything," Amara said calmly. And the woman spoke. She told her about Nkem, the first wife. She told her about the bruises, the crying, the fear. She told her about the night Nkem died. Every detail sharpened Amara's eyes. She listened without blinking, without gasping, without showing even a drop of fear. When the story ended, she thanked the woman and walked home with a quiet, steady step. Amara was not a weak woman pretending to be strong. No, she was a strong woman pretending to be weak. The next day, she accepted Okoro's bride price with a bowed head and humble smile. Everyone thought she was the perfect, gentle wife he wanted. But behind her calm eyes, a plan was forming, slow, precise, and dangerous. When Okoro came to take her to Egoma, she walked behind him like a timid new bride. On the journey, she kept her head down, her voice soft, her steps small. Okoro smiled proudly, pleased with his choice. But Amara's mind was racing. She replayed every story she heard. She studied his walk, his tone, his pride. She was entering the lion's den, but she was not prey. By the time they reached Egoma, Amara knew one thing for sure. She didn't marry Okoro to love him. She married him to teach him. And Okoro had no idea.
When Amara arrived in Egoma village as Okoro's new wife, the villagers stopped and stared. Whispers floated through the air. Another one? Will she survive him? Women shook their heads and men looked away, uncomfortable. Okoro, proud as ever, strutted beside her. He introduced her to neighbors and expected her to shrink or falter. But Amara greeted everyone politely, bowed low, and followed his instructions with flawless precision. "Sit," he commanded, and she sat. "Come," he said, and she came. "Do not speak," he ordered, and she remained silent. To Okoro, this was perfect obedience. He puffed up with pride, believing he had found a woman he could control. But Amara's calm, measured actions were deliberate. She was playing a part, one she wore like his second skin. Inside the house, she moved quietly, arranging her belongings carefully. She cooked, cleaned, and obeyed every word without complaint. Okoro watched her closely, expecting the usual signs of fear. Trembling hands, stuttering words, darting eyes, but none appeared. Her fear was too calm, too controlled. One evening, he asked, "Are you afraid of me?" "Yes, my husband," she replied softly, bowing her head. Okoro nodded, satisfied, yet a faint unease stirred in him. There was something too deliberate in her calmness, a hidden strength behind those quiet eyes. At night, Amara observed him. She noted how he clenched his fists when angry, the twitch of his jaw when frustrated, the way his chest rose and fell with controlled anger. Every detail was memorized, every weakness catalogued. Amara smiled faintly to herself, whispering in the dark, "Soon you will learn what fear truly is, and it will not be me trembling." The villagers saw a timid, obedient wife. But behind her gentle mask, Amara's mind walked like a hidden storm. Patience, observation, and courage grew in silence. She had entered Okoro's world not to be controlled, but to turn the tables.
Days passed in Okoro's house, but nothing went as he expected. Amara continued to act obedient, quiet and fearful, or so it seemed. She followed every command, yet there was something in her eyes he couldn't read. They were calm, too calm, like a river hiding a strong current beneath. Okoro began to notice small things. The way she listened without flinching when he shouted. The way she never begged or pleaded. The way she sometimes smiled softly when he thought she was afraid. It made him uneasy, though he could not say why.
"Are you learning your place?" he asked one evening after she had served him supper.
"Yes, husband," she said, her voice soft but steady. He frowned.
"You speak too clearly for a frightened woman." Amara lowered her head, hiding the smile forming at the corner of her lips. "I try to obey well," she whispered. Okoro dismissed it for now, but late that night, he awoke to a strange sound, a soft voice, so quiet he thought he had imagined it. "I know what you've done," she murmured. He froze, his heart raced. Who had been speaking? Amara sat upright in the dark, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "I know about Enkim, about everything," she said softly, almost like a threat hidden in a lullaby. Okoro's stomach tightened. He had married a woman he thought would fear him completely, but now doubts crept in. Could she be planning something? Amara leaned back, pretending to close her eyes, but she was awake, watching, waiting. Her obedience was a mask. Her calmness was a trap. The next morning, she moved through the house as usual. She cooked, cleaned, and followed every order. Yet, Okoro felt it, a quiet tension, as if the air itself had shifted. He could not see it, but he sensed it. Something was coming, something he did not understand. Amara smiled inwardly. Her moment would come. She had waited long enough. And deep inside, Okoro knew, though he could not name it yet, that the woman he thought he controlled might soon control him instead.
The days in Okoro's house grew strange. Outwardly, everything seemed normal. Amara obeyed every order, cooked his meals on time, and kept the house spotless. But beneath the surface, subtle changes began. Amara started small. She delayed serving his food by a few minutes. She misheard his instructions on purpose, then apologized softly, letting him think it was his mistake. She spoke just enough to plant confusion, never enough to defy him outright. Okoro noticed these tiny cracks. At first, he laughed. A woman forgets sometimes, he told himself, but the cracks widened, and with them, his unease grew. One afternoon, he commanded, "Sweep the yard properly, wife. Don't leave a single leaf." Amara obeyed, but she swept only half the yard before kneeling to arrange flowers in the corner. When he noticed, he frowned. "Why is the yard not clean?" I asked. He asked sharply. Amara looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "I thought the flowers needed care more, husband. The yard will be clean after I finish." Okoro's jaw tightened. Something in her voice, the calm certainty, the lack of fear, made him hesitate. He couldn't punish her, not fully, because she obeyed in the end, but his pride ached. That night, she sat beside him quietly. "Do you think a wife should only obey? Or should she also think?" she whispered. Okoro froze. The question was dangerous, but she smiled at him as if daring him to challenge her. And then came the smile he could not read, a subtle knowing curl of her lips. It was the smile of someone who had plans, patience, and courage. Okoro clenched his fist under the blanket. Fear he did not want to admit crept in. He had faced fear in many forms, but not like this. Amara lay down beside him, her eyes closing, but her mind was awake, plotting. She was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal that the obedient wife he thought he had married was only a mask. And deep in the night, she whispered again to herself, "Soon, the man who ruled with fear will kneel to respect." The shadows in the house seemed darker that night, and Okoro, despite his pride, felt it. A storm was coming.
One evening, after a long day of work, Okoro sat by the fire, expecting Amara to serve him quietly as usual. But this time, she did not move immediately. She watched him with calm, piercing eyes, and for a moment, he felt uneasy. "Why do you look at me like that?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended. Amara's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Because I know," she said softly. Okoro blinked. "Know what?" She paused, letting the silence stretch like a rope ready to snap. "About your first wife, Nkem. I know what happened to her." A chill ran down Okoro's spine.
His fists tightened, and he tried to hide his fear. What do you mean? He asked, his voice low. Amara leaned closer, her eyes glinting in the firelight. I know everything, the beatings, the tears, the fear. I know how you made her life miserable until she died. I know the villagers whispered about it. I know the truth, Okoro. For the first time, he felt a crack in his armor. The man who had always commanded obedience now faced a woman who could see through him completely. Amara continued, her voice calm but firm. I did not come to this village to love you blindly. I came to teach you a lesson. I came to show you that fear has limits and cruelty has consequences. Okoro's face darkened. He tried to shout to assert his control, but something in her calmness froze his words. He realized that she was not the timid, frightened woman he thought he had married. You dare speak to me this way? He demanded, struggling to regain dominance. I dare, because I have studied you and I know who you truly are. And now, it is time you learnt who I truly am. Okoro leaned back, sweat forming on his brow. A cold realization struck him. The obedient wife he had thought he controlled was gone. In her place stood a woman with a plan, patience, and courage he had never faced before. Amara's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Soon, everyone will see the man behind the mask, she whispered. Okoro shivered, though he tried to hide it. He had faced fear in many forms, but not like this. The days that followed were strange in Okoro's house. Amara continued her act of obedience, but now her small act of defiance became sharper. She moved with careful precision, giving him exactly what he expected, while subtly shifting the balance of power. Okoro noticed the changes, but could not understand them. Meals arrived slightly late, chores were done with small variations, and her calm gaze sometimes felt like a mirror reflecting all of his cruelty back at him. The man who had once ruled with fear now found himself questioning everything he thought he controlled. Amara's influence grew quietly. She started directing the household, gently correcting servants, suggesting improvements to daily routines, and asking questions that made Okoro pause before answering. At first, he laughed it off. She's just a clever wife, he told himself. But the more he tried to assert authority, the more her quiet confidence began to dominate the home. One morning, she told him, "Husband, perhaps you should let me cook today. You can rest." Okoro hesitated. The offer seemed innocent enough, but something about the calm tone and the steady look in her eyes made him pause. He found himself nodding almost without realizing it. That day, he followed her instructions as she guided him around the house, and to his surprise, everything ran smoothly. Amara's plan was working perfectly. She had gained subtle control over the household, and Okoro was too proud to notice it fully. Yet, she was patient. She wanted the ultimate lesson to be delivered publicly, where everyone could witness the shift. At night, she whispered quietly to herself, "Soon, the man who ruled with fear will kneel before respect. Soon, the village will see the truth." The villagers, unaware of the storm brewing in Okoro's home, continued their daily lives, but Amara was already preparing them for what to come. She had spoken to the women quietly, hinting that justice would be done. They had begun to watch, curious, waiting, ready to support the woman who dared challenge cruelty. Okoro, meanwhile, remained unaware of the power slipping through his fingers. He thought he was still the master, but in truth, the trap had already closed. And Amara, patient and cunning, waited for the perfect moment to reveal it fully. The sun rose bright over Egoma village, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. Villagers went about their morning routines, unaware that today would be unlike any other. Amara had planned something bold, something that will make everyone see the man they feared in a new light. "Husband," she said calmly to Okoro, who was still groaning in the morning heat, "today I want you to come with me to the village square." Okoro blinked. "Why? What is in the square?" Amara smiled faintly, soft and controlled. "Just a little demonstration, husband. Come." He hesitated. The square was where the elders often gathered and where gossip traveled fast. But her calm tone, her steady gaze,
made him obey. He followed her through the streets, his chest swelling with pride. He believed she had some chore in mind, perhaps a small show of obedience for the neighbors. By the time they reached the square, a small crowd had gathered. Curious neighbors whispered, watching the procession. Women peeked from behind fences. Children stood on tiptoes, and elders leaned forward, sensing something unusual. Okoro looked at Amara, confused. "What is all this?" "Just step forward, husband," she said softly, her calmness unshaken. The villagers murmured among themselves, some recognizing her from the village, others watching quietly from the sidelines. There was an air of anticipation, the kind that made people hold their breath. Okoro's pride wavered slightly, but he stepped forward anyway. He did not yet understand the full measure of what was about to happen. He believed he was still in control, that Amara was simply performing some harmless ritual. Amara lifted her head and spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the square. "People of Egoma, you have watched this man roll through fear. You have whispered about his cruelty. Today, you will see a lesson in justice." The villagers froze. Mothers clutched their children, men straightened in their seats, and a few elders exchanged knowing glances. Okoro's stomach churned. Fear pricked at him for the first time in years. Amara's calm voice echoed, "Bring me a broom." A stunned silence fell over the village.
A hush fell over Egoma village as a woman approached Amara carrying a broom. The children gawked and even the elders exchanged uneasy glances. Okoro's heart pounded. He had expected obedience, perhaps mild embarrassment, but not this. Amara stood tall, her calm eyes scanning the crowd. "People of Egoma," she began, her voice clear and steady. "For years you have witnessed a man who rules through fear. You have whispered about his cruelty, but you have done nothing. Today, we change that." She turned her gaze to Okoro, who stiffened. His face had gone pale, and his pride faltered. "Do you know why you are here?" Okoro swallowed, unable to speak. "I know what you did to Nkem, your first wife. I know how you treated her, how you caused fear, pain, and sorrow in your home. I know you thought you could control every woman who entered your life, but today, the tables turn." The villagers whispered among themselves, shock and excitement mixing in their voices. Amara raised the broom. "Husband, you will learn a lesson that cannot be forgotten. You will understand what it feels like to be under someone else's authority. Today, you will obey and I will command." Okoro's jaw clenched. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. The air was heavy with anticipation. Amara's eyes sparkled with quiet triumph. "From this moment, you will follow my instructions. You will cook, clean, and serve me. You will no longer strike fear into women. Today you learn respect, humility, and the weight of your past actions." She stepped closer, broom in hand. The villagers gasped as Okoro hesitated. He realized for the first time that Amara was not afraid of him. He was afraid of her. And in that moment, the village saw what true courage looked like. A woman standing tall, unshaken, and commanding justice with quiet strength. Amara's calm voice carried over the square one last time. "Obey, husband, or face the consequences of your cruelty publicly." Okoro's pride faltered completely, and the weight of the truth settled on him like a heavy stone. The villagers' eyes followed every movement, some stifling giggles, others wide-eyed with amazement. For the first time in his life, the man who had ruled with fear was powerless in public. Amara lifted the broom and tapped it lightly on the ground. "Husband," she said calmly, "today you will learn how it feels to obey. You will follow my every instruction." He swallowed hard. Pride, the weapon he had wielded for years, now felt heavy and useless. He nodded slowly, barely able to meet her steady gaze. "First," Amara continued, "you will prepare the meals for the village elders." She handed him a basket of ingredients. Okoro glanced down, confused and humiliated, but obeyed without protest. As he walked, Amara circled him like a quiet storm. "Make sure the fire is strong," she instructed. "Do not let anything burn. Attend to every detail." Okoro's hands shook as he followed her commands. Villagers began whispering, pointing, laughing softly.
It was strange to see him reduced to following orders, serving others, and performing tasks he once thought beneath him. Amara stepped back, raising the broom again. "Tomorrow, husband, you will learn even more. You will not eat before I do. You will not rest while I command. You will understand what it means to live under someone else's authority." He clenched his fist, but could not resist. He had no choice. His face burned with shame, a feeling so foreign he didn't know how to cope with it. The villagers watched in silence, witnessing the complete reversal of power. Mothers whispered to daughters, "This is courage, this is justice." The men who once envied Okoro's strength now saw the truth. Cruelty is never strength. Amara smiled faintly, victorious yet composed. She had begun her lesson, and it would only grow. As Okoro served her the meal she had prepared, she said softly, "The woman you once thought weak is stronger than you imagined. Remember this, husband." And for the first time in years, Okoro realized he had underestimated the power of patience, cunning, and courage.
Days turned into weeks, and the village of Egoma could hardly believe what they saw. Okoro, once feared by every woman and respected by every man, now cooked, cleaned, and obeyed the commands of his wife. Amara moved through the household with grace and authority, the broom in her hand a symbol of power and justice. The villagers whispered in admiration. "She has taught him well, oh," they said. "Courage like hers cannot be tamed." Okoro's pride had been stripped away layer by layer. He woke each morning to instructions from Amara, prepared meals under her watchful eyes, and followed her orders without complaint. Even when he tried to assert authority, she remained calm, unshaken, and clever. "Make sure the food is perfect today, oh," she instructed one morning, watching him closely. "We will eat together, but I eat first. Only then may you eat." His face burned with humiliation, but he obeyed. The reality settled in. The man who once ruled through fear had become the servant. Amara's influence extended beyond the household. Women in the village saw her courage and began to speak up more freely. They shared stories of her wisdom, her patience, and her ability to confront cruelty without losing composure. Sisterhood began to grow stronger, inspired by the woman who dared to challenge a tyrant. Okoro, meanwhile, felt the full weight of his past actions. Every command he followed reminded him of the pain he had caused his first wife. Every meal he prepared, every chore he completed was a lesson in humility. One evening, as Amara walked through the village square with broom in hand, villagers gathered to watch her. They cheered for her strength, for justice, and for the lesson learned. Okoro stood quietly beside her, obedient and transformed. Amara's calm gaze met his. "Do you understand now, husband?" she asked softly. Okoro bowed his head. I do," he admitted, voice heavy with regret. Amara smiled faintly, her authority unchallenged. The village had witnessed a complete reversal, a transformation that carried a simple but powerful message. Cruelty is never strength, and respect must be earned, not demanded. The woman who had once been thought timid now ruled, not with fear, but with courage, wisdom, and justice.
The village of Egoma had changed forever. The man who once ruled through fear was now a servant in his own home, and the woman who had once been perceived as gentle and timid had become a symbol of courage, justice, and wisdom. Okoro walked quietly in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and tending the fire under Amara's watchful eyes. Every movement reminded him of the pain he had caused, the lives he had harmed, and the shame he could no longer hide. Amara, as calm and commanding as ever, finally spoke to him one evening. "Husband," she said, "you have followed my instructions, humbled yourself, and faced your past. Do you understand the weight of your actions now?" Okoro bowed his head. "I understand," he admitted, voice heavy with remorse. "I have caused pain and fear, and I am ashamed. I promise to change. I promise to respect every woman, every life from now on." The villagers, who had watched the transformation, nodded in approval. Mothers smiled, children laughed, and the men of the village realized that respect, not fear, was true strength. Amara stepped forward, broom in hand, and lifted it slightly. It was not a tool of punishment anymore. It was a symbol of justice, patience, and courage. "Let this be a lesson to all," she said, her voice clear across the village square. "Cruelty will always have consequences. Power gained through fear is temporary. True strength lies in respect, wisdom, and humility." Okoro knelt, not in shame alone but in understanding. He had been humbled, and in that humility, he began to truly see the world differently. The women of the village gathered around Amara, praising her courage. Sisterhood was proud, and the lesson was clear. No one should be ruled by fear, and injustice cannot survive where courage and wisdom prevail. From that day forward, Amara became the village's queen of respect, justice, and leadership. Okoro, transformed, served with humility, never again forgetting the woman who had taught him the greatest lesson of all. And the moral of their story spread far and wide. True power is earned through respect. Cruelty destroys, and courage can change even the fiercest hearts.